I was in therapy for 2.5 years, and 8 months ago I finished therapy, and I've been navigating world without my psychologist, which felt like my safety blanket going away. And it definitely has been a little bit scary, but also I recognize that I've learned a lot about myself in those 2.5 years. I've learned different tools, and now it was my turn to go out into the world and apply everything that I've learned, which has been interesting in itself. And on the other hand, I am quite proud of myself. In this video, I wanted to share with you my biggest learnings from 2.5 years of being in therapy, because maybe you're considering therapy, maybe you are in therapy and you're just curious, but I also recognize that I was in a very good and lucky position to be able to work with a therapist for 2.5 years. I recognize that not everybody has this chance, so I hope that this video might give you a little bit more insight into what I've been able to learn from therapy. Feel your feelings. It is easier said than done, and I thought that I was feeling my feelings because I've always been quite an emotional person. If I'm really sad, I'm gonna cry. If I'm angry, I'm gonna cry. If I'm happy, I'm gonna cry. If I'm disappointed, I'm gonna cry. And I think I just confused the fact that, like, if I respond with tears to a lot of different situations, it means that I'm feeling my feelings, when in reality, boy, was I not feeling my feelings. First clue that my therapist kind of pointed out to me is that I tend to talk really fast about matters that are really important to me. And the reason I talk so fast is because my emotions are not able to catch up with the speed at which I'm talking. So essentially, I would talk super fast about a lot of the triggering things or why I was upset about certain things, and my therapist would interrupt me in the middle of me speaking and say, "All right, calm down, take a few deep breaths, and really slowly continue telling your story to me." And the second I would slow down and start talking really slowly about the things that were so upsetting or triggering to me, I would just start crying. This sadness would wash over me, and he would say, "You see, you had all of these emotions bottled up. You didn't want to feel them. You were talking super fast. And as a result, I was not accessing, not feeling my emotions. And the second I slow down, my emotions have the time to bubble up, and then they would just come out." So that was the biggest learning, figuring out and seeing what are all the ways in which I was blocking myself from feeling my emotions. And that was through talking really fast, through distracting myself, usually with productive things like, oh, I need to work, I need to study, I need to, do something else productive. So I started investigating and seeing all the different ways or coping mechanisms that I had that blocked me from feeling my feelings. On the other hand, when it comes to feeling your feelings, I realized that to a lot of situations, I responded with anger. And I thought that, sure, I'm feeling angry, which means that I'm feeling my emotion, right? But anger was actually my initial response to a lot of triggering situations, so to say. And what I realized that yes, it was an initial emotion, but underneath that anger, deeper, was actually a lot of fear. And I would use the anger because anger is powerful, right? It's explosive. If I'm angry, it means like, be scared of me, right? I feel like I am bigger and I feel like I am powerful. And I was using anger to make myself feel powerful because underneath it, I was a really scared little girl that had a lot of fears. So I also had to investigate if there were certain emotions, even though I was feeling them, that were covering up the deeper emotions. And I know that sounds super matrix confusing, but yeah, that was the reality of things. And it only comes with time, when you ask yourself the deeper questions, when you observe yourself, that you're able to distinguish, all right, is this my real emotion, truly what I'm feeling, or is this emotion covering up something else? Through learning how to feel my feelings, I realized that time doesn't heal things, you heal things. I had to go back and process and grieve a lot of the things that happened in my childhood. And as time went on, it's not that suddenly I felt fine and I forgot about all the things that were not great that happened in my childhood, is that I built up more and more armor and more ways to distract myself. And then when I would interact or when I would be in situations in the present time as a 25-year-old, I would react in not so healthy ways. And that reaction came because it triggered something in the past. So time truly doesn't heal things. I don't believe that at all. I don't think it's true. People who say that, time heals things, especially when they're very heavy, traumatic things, let's say, accompanied by a lot of heavy emotions, it just means that you build up your defenses more. You build up those walls, you distract yourself, and you don't really heal things. So I had to go back. I had to heal a lot of things. I had to grieve a lot of things that happened ages ago, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And through that release and through that processing, then I was able to find healing. What you're triggered about is not really what you're triggered about. This one is still like a tough pill to swallow, because when I get triggered, I sure as hell feel like I am being triggered about this specific thing. But after, again, observing myself way more, asking myself the deeper questions, I realized that a lot of the things that I had overly strong reactions to, they had to do something with something completely else. Again, a lot of stuff coming with my childhood. I also realized that I was getting triggered to certain behaviors or certain people or certain circumstances when it was something that I was abandoning or dismissing within myself. So for example, if I saw certain qualities in people, let's take, for example, confidence, right? If somebody was super, super confident, I would get so triggered and I would judge them in my mind because I didn't want to recognize the fact, or really I didn't want to take a look in the mirror and see how insecure and not confident about myself I felt. So really through this projection of judging other people, getting triggered by certain things, it was mirroring to me that I had not embodied or I had not acknowledged something within my own self, certain qualities that I didn't want to admit I had, or certain characteristics that I didn't want to think about, or certain insecurities that I had. So truly, simply put, what you're triggered about is most likely not what you're triggered about. And again, it's such a juxtaposition. I think as I've been in therapy, it made me realize how complicated we are. I mean, I barely understand myself, and then you put into the picture other people who are as complex as me. But then I think we have this thing that when we look at other people, we think that other people are much more simple. You should act rational. You should get your shit together way quicker. You should do this. How come you're not changing your behavior? But then I look at myself and I realize how complicated it is, how many layers of the psyche there are, and how difficult it is sometimes to see certain things because we have all of these blind spots. So then when I remember that, it's easier to look at other people and be like, right, they're just as complicated as me. But there are so many layers to the psyche. And again, what you're triggered about most likely is not really what you're triggered about. Take responsibility for everything. This was the hardest thing to own up to, I guess, or to learn. Taking responsibility over everything, over my relationships, over my thoughts, over my behavior, over my emotions, and learning how to regulate my emotions. And through 2.5 years of therapy, I was able to reflect on my life all the past years, and especially from the ages of 16 to, let's say, 23, and how I was not taking responsibility for things. I was reflecting on my old relationship, and it made me so sad because I was a complete asshole that was ignorant, and I was not taking responsibility over my words, over how I made people feel, what I said, the behaviors that I displayed. And my response, I remember so clearly, and honestly, this makes me feel so embarrassed. My response would be, oh yeah, but you feel that way, as if I had nothing to do to make people feel a certain way. So yeah, it was such a sad thing to go back in time and see things from a completely different perspective and recognize how irresponsible I was with me, really, and also how irresponsible I was towards other people. And I was somebody that would hate apologizing. I would literally try and not apologize for anything. You know, I made you feel bad, I made you sad, I said something hurtful. I wouldn't apologize for it. I would be like, yeah, okay, you know, I'll do better next time. Never a, I'm so sorry I made you feel that way. Now, when things happen, this is the first thing I jump to. I am so sorry. I recognize it's not right what I said. I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I'm sorry I said this. I'll do better next time. My ego is not as strong, so to say, and I don't think it's a weakness to admit our wrongdoings. So I'm really working on taking responsibility and also taking responsibility over my own needs. Nobody else can meet my needs. I can express my needs to other people, and they could meet them, but also they could say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. So then it is my responsibility to meet my own needs. And this has been the biggest shift between being like having more like a childlike perspective and way of being versus a more adult perspective and way of being, really like a grown-up, I guess, perspective. And I made a video about this as well, where I went over the differences between sort of like a child self and an adult self. So this was really like the fine line of taking responsibility. This is not a kid who's playing a victim. This is not a kid who's not going to take responsibility for anything. Now I am an adult and I have to take responsibility for everything, and also work on different things, admit my shortcomings, and like I mentioned, feel my feelings and regulate my emotions at the same time. These have been the 3 biggest things I've learned through 2.5 years of therapy. The last 8 months have been really interesting. I've been applying the tools that I've learned with my therapist. I have been working a lot on myself. It's been difficult at times. I've missed my therapist. At moments I wanted to, you know, message him and be like, I need another session. But when we had our last session, he told me, you know, we're not gonna work together anymore. At some point in the future, if you need me, I'm here for you. You can always do another, session with me, but you have to go out into the world and pretend as if we're never gonna see each other again, because you really need to detach from me. You've learned so much. I've seen you grow and improve so much. And now it's like, you're ready to go out of the nest and, you know, fly and be your own person. So I've worked with 2 incredible therapists over the last 2.5 years. I'm so grateful. But yeah, these 3 things have greatly affected my life, and learning these 3 things, feeling my feelings, of course, taking responsibility and understanding that most of the time what I'm triggered about is not really what I'm triggered about. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Are you currently in therapy? Are you considering going? Maybe you also finished therapy. I would really like your take on this. And if you could also share with me your top 1 or top 2 biggest learnings that you've gained out of therapy. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.